Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going straight into a topic that really stirs things up. Intense debate, even disbelief for a lot of folks.
Right.
Alleged alien abductions.
Right.
Now, you might immediately think, okay, science fiction. But what you can't ignore is just the sheer number of accounts out there. And the fact that different groups, even governmental ones, have actually looked into these claims seriously.
Exactly. And our aim here really is just to explore the information we have. We're not trying to convince anyone either way.
No, definitely.
Think of it like we're guides, just navigating this really fascinating, sometimes pretty confusing territory. We'll look at, personal stories, supposed physical evidence, what organizations are doing, both on the ground and officially.
Okay, so to kick things off, maybe the best place to start is
Yeah.
the Barney and Betty Hill incident back in 1961.
Yeah, the classic.
It really is.
Mm.
For a lot of people, this case kind of set the stage for how we think about abductions today. So picture this. You're driving, quiet road, late night, coming back from vacation, and this light appears in the sky.
Yeah.
But it's weird. It's moving strangely, getting closer, and then gone.
Poof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when Barney and Betty got home, they realized something was off, like really off. They lost about 2 hours of time. And then came the anxiety, these disturbing dreams.
And what's really striking, I think, is what came out during hypnosis. They had separate sessions, right?
Separate, yeah.
And under hypnosis, they both started recalling being taken on to this, well, they described a saucer-shaped craft, and encountering these beings, small, gray. Betty remembered a long needle being put into her navel. Bernie recalled some kind of sample being taken, and this whole medical examination theme, it just keeps popping up in other accounts later on.
It's chilling, isn't it?
Ugh.
And the official explanation, Project Blue Book, the Air Force guys looking into UFOs.
Right.
Their conclusion, Jupiter.
Just Jupiter.
Yeah, just Jupiter, which, sounds pretty dismissive.
Yeah.
But despite that, the Hills, they were convinced their whole lives. So this incident really helps define what we mean by abduction for this deep dive. We're talking about reported events, people saying they were taken by non-human entities, usually against their will, often involves some kind of medical thing.
Right, the procedures.
And always leaves people with tons of unanswered questions.
And it's key to remember, the Hills story, it's not alone. Details change, sure, but you see these patterns repeating, and sometimes really unique stuff, too, in other big cases.
Like Travis Walton,
Yeah.
1975.
Yeah, Travis Walton, logger, disappeared for 5 days straight.
5 days.
And when he finally turned up, he talked about being on a craft, seeing these tall humanoid figures and glowing operating tables, he called them.
Wow. Okay, or what about Frederick Valentich, that Australian pilot in '78? That one's just baffling.
Oh, completely. He radios in reporting this weird aircraft near him, and his last words were basically, "It's not an aircraft."
And just nothing.
Silence. Vanished. Plane pilot, never seen again.
But the Valentich story gets even weirder, doesn't it? There's that alleged Soviet interception.
Yeah. In '82, the story goes, they found this black capsule inside a metal plate that supposedly uncurled itself.
Okay.
And it had this message etched on it in English, claiming to be from Valentich.
Get out. Seriously.
That's the report. Said he'd been taken, made some kind of deal, and was now, piloting their ship as a warning.
Whoa.
And the kicker.
Careful.
Apparently, Australian authorities confirmed the handwriting matched Valentich's known samples.
Okay, that adds a whole other layer, something physical.
Exactly. It blurs the line between just testimony and, potential evidence.
So, all right, we've heard these really intense stories. The big question then, the one probably everyone's thinking is, why? Why would this be happening? Does the source material offer any ideas?
It does. It gets into some pretty interesting theories. One major one centers on reproduction.
Reproduction? How so?
Well, the idea is maybe these entities struggle to reproduce themselves, so they might be using human DNA, our genetic material, as a resource somehow. Another big theory is hybridization, basically blending human and alien genes.
Right, creating hybrids.
Yeah. And there are different takes on why. You've got, Oxford professor Young Hei-Chi suggesting maybe these hybrids are designed to survive on a future Earth, one damaged by environmental change. Sort of adaptation.
Okay, adaptation for survival. Makes a kind of logical, if scary, sense.
But then you have someone like Dr. David Jacobs, who's done a ton of research with abductees, and he sees it much more darkly. He thinks it's not about adaptation, it's about replacement.
Replacement of humans.
That's his interpretation, yeah. That ultimately the goal is to replace humanity.
Wow. Okay, those are two very different potential outcomes. Adaptation versus replacement. It really makes you wonder how seriously governments are taking any of this.
Well, it turns out the U.S. government, at least, has publicly acknowledged they are looking into related phenomena.
Right, the whole UAP thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unidentified aerial phenomena. That's the new term, isn't it?
Right.
In 2020, the Pentagon actually admitted they have a task force investigating UAPs. They've acknowledged thousands of sightings, hundreds of classified files, a lot they can't explain. And they frame it mostly as a national security issue. You know, what's flying in our airspace?
Which I guess makes sense from their perspective. But it raises a pretty wild point from the source material. If something like 6% of Americans claim they've had an abduction experience,
Yeah, 6%. It's a startling figure.
then how effective is just looking at it as a defense problem? That's potentially millions of people.
It's a huge disconnect, right? And while the government's investigating, you also have people trying to, well, initiate contact themselves.
Oh, right, like Stephen Greer.
Yeah, Dr. Stephen Greer. He promotes this idea of fifth kind contact, CE5, using things like meditation to actively reach out. He's even got an app for it.
An app for contacting aliens, okay.
Well, protocols for attempting it, yeah.
Yeah.
And you hear these anecdotes like Dan Berg meditating in a field claims he found crop circles there the next day. Not proof, obviously, but part of the conversation.
Huh. And then there's that really old kind of mysterious story about Maria Orsic, the German medium back in the 40s.
Oh, the Vril Society stuff. Yeah, fascinating and strange. Claimed she was getting telepathic messages, blueprints for spaceships, in Sumerian of all things.
Sumerian, wow.
And the end of that story is just eerie. 1945, war's ending. She and her whole group apparently just vanished.
Vanished.
Completely. The only thing left, supposedly, was this final telegram saying, no one is left.
Okay, that's unsettling. Gives you chills.
It really does. Adds this layer of deep mystery, like maybe forces beyond our understanding were involved.
So you've got people trying to make contact, and then you have organizations trying to track and analyze what's being seen. It's clearly not just, random stories. People are trying to study it systematically.
Absolutely. You've got MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, big civilian group, investigators all over the world, been around for ages.
Right, I've heard of MUFON.
Then there's UFO data, apparently more secretive. Supposedly scientists, ex-NASA people, maybe insiders, claiming to have special info.
Interesting.
And New Force, the National UFO Reporting Center. They run a hotline, 24/7, and they seem to liaise with, like, air traffic control, NORAD, even the DoD.
So they're more focused on the hard data.
Pretty much. Their goal seems to be collecting verifiable stuff, sightings, flight paths, radar data, correlating reports, less about proving aliens exist, more about documenting the phenomena.
Which brings up a really important point.
Right.
How many incidents aren't reported? The source material suggests there could be thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of cases we just never hear about.
It's almost impossible to quantify, isn't it? If people are afraid of ridicule or just don't know where to report.
Exactly. And some of the alleged unreported or less known events are, well, pretty wild.
Like the Berkshire incident, 1969.
Yeah, get this. Supposedly 40 witnesses saw 4 family members just disappear from their car for 2 hours. Then they reappeared further down the road, sitting in different seats, no memory of the missing time.
40 witnesses, wow.
Then the Pascagoula case in '73. 2 fishermen say they were paralyzed by a light, taken aboard something, examined, then put back on the riverbank.
And weren't there other witnesses who saw strange lights that night, too?
That's the claim, yeah. Corroborating lights in the area.
And back to Travis Walton for a sec. His co-workers, the ones who saw him disappear near the UFO.
Right, they were suspected of murdering him initially.
Yeah, but they all apparently passed lie detector tests about what they saw. And later, some researchers reported trees growing unusually fast right where the encounter supposedly happened. Circumstantial, maybe, but interesting.
Very. And then there's the Kelly Cahill case from 1993. That one is particularly disturbing.
Extremely. She claims she was abducted, but in front of 6 other people.
6 witnesses.
Who all reportedly had similar memories of it, and even similar physical marks or scars afterwards.
Okay, that's different.
Yeah.
Multiple witnesses, shared physical evidence.
But it gets darker. The really unsettling part is that later, Kelly Cahill herself allegedly disappeared, along with the case files. And even some of the investigators looking into it.
Disappeared, like vanished.
That's the allegation. It adds this really sinister element, like maybe someone or something was actively trying to cover it up.
Man, you can see why people struggle with this stuff, right? It just fundamentally shakes your view of, well, everything. our place in the universe, our control.
Absolutely. The source material touches on that. Maybe accepting this is real forces us to confront the idea that we're not top dog, that we're maybe not in control.
And maybe ridiculing people who report these things,
Yeah.
labeling them crazy or whatever. Maybe that's just a defense mechanism.
It could be a way to keep things feeling normal, predictable, easier than facing something huge and unknown and potentially, well, scary. Creates a stigma so we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. But if this is happening, that reaction, the stigma, the government's maybe holding back info, really hampers any chance of actually understanding it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How do you get clarity if the experiencers are shut down?
Exactly. So this whole deep dive, exploring all this,
Yeah,
it really leaves you with some big questions, doesn't it?
for sure.
How seriously do we take these accounts? They're consistent in some ways, but seem so unbelievable. Even if many have explanations, what if just a few? What if one is real? What does that mean for
What
us?
are the implications?
Huge implications.
So as we wrap this up, maybe the final thought to leave everyone with is this. Imagine one day the evidence becomes undeniable, just irrefutable. The reality shifts. Are we as a species going to be ready, not just to accept that it's real, but to try and understand the intent, to move past are they here, and grapple with the much harder question, what do they want?
That's the real leap, isn't it?
It is something to think about. How open are we, really, to possibilities way outside our current box? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.